Well, we're here making some pixel art. First, what you want to do is go to File, New, Blank File. We don't need to bother with the name yet, but the width we are going to change to pixels, and you can see that it's a very large number. We need to bring that down to 30, and a height as well of 30. So it's a very, very small image. The resolution will be 72. Color mode will be RGB, and background contents, it's best if you have this be transparent. Press transparent. That way you can save it as a PNG later and have it float, for instance, in a video game that you're making or something like that. Press OK. When you have this little window, you can drag it up to the orange line and zoom in. You can do that in lots of different ways. Hold down Alt and use the scroll wheel and scroll in. You could also press Control and plus, or Control and minus will zoom out. Or you can hold down Control and space and make a box around the thing that you want. If you want a full view of the screen, you can also press Control 0, and that'll jump immediately to a full view. Now, it is convenient for us to be able to see what we're painting or drawing on top of a white background. So the next thing is to click this little white box that says Create a New Layer. You'll drag that below Layer 1 and come on over to the Paint Bucket tool. You might see your screen like this. You can always toggle between those two different ways of viewing the tools. And the Paint Bucket tool, just choose your color down in the bottom left. I'm going to choose white. Anywhere in this space, you can click and it will paint it white for you. So, the tool that you'll be using to draw with is called the pencil tool, and it's nested within this brush tool. So you click and hold, and then you see the options pencil tool. Now would be a good time to stop and make sure you have a file open 30 pixels by 30 pixels at 72 pixels per inch, and using the pencil tool with a white background layer behind a transparent layer. So one thing that helps you make pixel art in Photoshop is to create a little grid over top of your workspace. Now if you look up in View, you can click on the word grid, and it'll give you this massive grid that won't be useful to you. To change the orientation and measurement of that grid, go to Edit and Preferences and Guides and Grid. There's really only one place that you need to be concerned about here, and it's this grid line every 1 inch right now, but it should say pixels. And right now it's dividing or subdividing that single pixel block into 4 different subdivisions. And instead of that, you just want one subdivision. You just want it to be that one single block. And press OK. This way, when you're working with pixels, it's easy to see how many blocks separate your space from another spot that you're going to drop a pixel, or just to feel like you're neatly orienting diagonal lines and that kind of thing. So feel free to leave that grid on. The next thing you should know is about color picking. Right now you're probably used to picking colors from the either foreground color or the background color. And that's nice if you have two different colors. You can easily switch between them by pressing this little arrow button. Or you can press X on your keyboard just without anything else. Just X, and that'll switch between them as well for easy painting between two things back and forth, such as white and black if you're doing a drawing. But when you're making pixel art, you're going to use more than 2 different colors, and it's nice to have them easily selectable so you don't create an inconsistent color way. So it may help to double click on the word effects here so that you don't have that window showing. And over in the window menu, click on that color swatches. You can increase the size of this window if you'd like. And just notice all the colors that are available to you as default colors. Now, you're not restricted to these by any means, and the way you make your own little swatches to get added to this, depending on what it is that you're painting in Photoshop, is this little create new color swatch of foreground color. So you would choose here whichever color you wanted. Let's say you wanted like, say we're doing an apple. You might want a neutral reddish kind of color. Maybe we're making it a touch more orangey than red, and you'd press OK. In order to make this orangey red become one of your easily accessible colors, you just press this little foreground color button, and there it goes. You've dropped it in. Now what's good about that is that you can double click on this again, or sorry, single click, and select a highlight of that very same reddish orange. Let's say about there. That's a bit of a lighter color, and let's make it a touch more yellow this time as well. You can press OK and add that color to the new mix. And you can go back to your first color and add a darker version of that same thing. Press OK and add that to the mix. So you're easily creating a little patch of colors that will become useful to you as you paint. You can even undock this color swatch window and place it closer to your workspace so that it's easier to select between colors that you'll be using. So that's one key idea. Take that color, you have one kind of middle color, you have a lighter color and a darker color around it. And that'll help give something the illusion of three-dimensional space. Let me show you how I would kind of begin to form an apple shape out of these three colors. So I'd have my pencil tool. I would choose my middle color, and I would begin to draw in this grid space. It doesn't need to be centered or whatever, you can move it around later. And you're trying to get the rough shape of an apple. Remember that apples don't have to be exactly round. And you can fill this in. You can even try using a paint bucket tool. And you've still got your middle color selected. So you click in here, and that should fill up that space. It added a few more pixels up there. So one thing that you can do to avoid that is take off the anti-alias tag, and that should fill in and not go beyond the diagonal space of one of those areas. Same in there. So that's an easy way to fill up a space quickly if you've already got an outline. Now going back to the pencil tool, you have sometimes you got to be, if your cursor appears to be in the right spot but it maybe paints into the lower space like that or like this, that could be a little bit confusing. Just be ready to press Ctrl Z to undo any of those actions. Go in the kind of top right or top middle of a spot on the grid in order to get it to sit in that spot. So Ctrl Z to undo that. So now that I've got this kind of base color, I can add the highlights. So if I imagine that the light is coming from above to the left, I can picture that there will be a little bit of highlight glowing around here. Let's say like that. It won't go too far down because that'll be the underside of the apple. And maybe a few touches of highlight over here, maybe one or two spots over around here. And I can take my dark pixels now and get where the stem kind of sits in a bit of a valley up at the top of an apple. And I'll also want my stem. So let's say that's kind of representative of the valley. I don't want that. Select that, cover that up again. And I'll also have some darker colors down towards the bottom of my apple. Usually there's a reflection of color at the bottom of an object, so don't go right to the bottom. Leave a neutral color in between. And not bad. You can take another color like these browns, or you can make some browns to get the stem of the apple. So let's get a new color to add to our palette. Let's go nice dark. Brown is of course a shaded orange, shaded red. Let's make it a touch reddish. Okay, and I will add that dark brown, and I'll add a highlight of that dark brown as well. So let's go into maybe into here. and add that. So I'll start with my dark brown, and the stem maybe, whoops, Control Z. Stem will come out of here and go up like that maybe. Give it a bulbous top. We can also add a highlight to that top. Oops, Control Z. Something like that. And this pixel's irritating me, so I'm going to remove it. If you want to erase pixels, do so with the eraser tool, but instead of using brush mode, I want you to use block. So that would just eliminate single blocks. Now this reveals a mistake that I've made throughout this whole thing. Look at what layer I've been painting my apple onto. I've been painting onto a white layer. And what that means is that when I try to save this and use it in a video game, for instance, as a sprite, it will use the background white and it'll just have a white block around my apple instead of having the apple float free. Now I can fix that. I can just get rid of my layer 1. I can erase the outside of the apple using my magic wand tool. So here's the magic wand tool. I have a tolerance of 32 right now. Let's see if that works. Yep, so that's selected all around the outside edge of my apple, and that all those white pixels I will press on the delete key to get rid of. And you'll notice that it kind of got in there. Now, that's not what we want. Same thing with the magic wand tool. You'll want to take anti-alias off. That just basically smooths stuff out. So you'd click again, press delete, and that way you don't have that kind of smoothing effect on these tiny pixel images. Click anywhere in your selection to deselect it, and let's make a new layer and get the white there again. I feel a little bit silly for having done this, but we've fixed it. Now in layer 2, the one that has your pixel stuff in it, that's what you want to be painting and using the pencil tool in. Maybe we want a leaf, and maybe some of these leaf colors are adequate for us, so we might take this one as our neutral kind of color and paint a leaf on there, something similar to this, and a highlight might form most of the top of that leaf. And maybe we want one dark pixel or two. Whoops, that was way off. Here or here, just to give it a bit of a volume. Now, if you want to look at this without your grid, you'd go back up to View, take Grid off, and you have a much more clean and neat version of your apple. This is a good time to add any other pixels that you think would work well, such as this one's irritating me, so I'd go back to my my middle tone and take that out. Maybe you can add some. There might be some dark pixels you might want to add. You could even do something like make it look like a bite is being taken out of it. So let's use our block eraser tool to kind of take some pixels out that might look like somebody has given this apple a chomp. And in order to make it look like maybe realistic, we might make a bit of a yellowish white flesh to that. So I don't think this is yellowish or whitish enough, so we might choose that color, but adjust it by clicking on here, maybe bringing it a little bit further over towards white, pressing OK, using our pencil tool, making sure we're on layer 2, and just adding some pixels in like so. And I know that's hard to see, but when we take the layer 3 off of it, it'll be obvious that there was some white stuff there. All right, and if you felt like that wasn't enough of a highlight, you could go back to your highlight neutral color. You could add a touch more white to it, and just pop a few choice pixels in to make it look especially delicious.